Welcome to the show for another Patreon pick.
Yeah, Patreon pick. Thanks, Tyler Pro, for picking out this selection. We've never done Starship Troopers.
No.
What the heck?
Have we ever done Verhoeven?
All right, what? We've never done Okay, let's do it.
It's good to have an excuse.
All right. Can't believe we haven't done it yet.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle Goethe from GoatFilmReviews.com.
Hey, of course, we have a Patreon, and I want to thank Tyler Pro for picking out this movie as a selection, and he's part of the Patreon. Join the Patreon, you can get a bunch of new content. We don't put it on the show, as well as an opportunity, like Tyler, to pick a movie we review and future episodes, and of course, shout out to you as well, and anything you want to plug as also. Also, Kyle and I are members of the Minnesota Film Critics Alliance. Check out that webpage for critics reviews as well as ours, and you can follow us on social media as well. And today we're talking about a movie that was totally bombed. It tanked when it came out in 1997, but people kind of shine onto it, and we'll talk a little bit about the flip as well as we go through this.
Yeah, I've got some fond memories of this bomb.
Okay.
All right, near the end of the 22nd century, humanity is nearing war with the alien arachnids of Klendathu. Johnny Rico and friends are about to graduate and take the next step on the road to citizenship, military service. As he rises the ranks of the mobile infantry, Johnny's relationships with those around him are tested and fractured.
Background first, this was a treatment. There was going to be something about Bug's life, and then somebody's like, it's too close to this book I know about.
So Ed Neumeyer, who did RoboCop with Paul Verhoeven, of course, so they'd worked together several years earlier.
Yeah.
But of course, this was like the early 90s. This movie was basically a story of the 90s, that he was working on this idea. I think it was called Bug Kill at Outpost 7 or something like that.
I like
really
that
odd
title.
little thing. But he wanted to write this kind of like big, silly, xenophobic, hunt big guns kind of a war film.
Yeah.
And he wanted to have a universal enemy, somebody that everyone can hate, like big bugs,
Sure.
especially because his wife did not like bugs, of course. So he's like, what am I going to do? Put my wife's least favorite thing into a big movie. He brought it to John Davison, who had produced RoboCop with him and Verhoeven.
Get familiar with that name, especially from 80s.
Yeah. And so Davison read it, and he was like, this kind of sounds like Starship Troopers. But there's no way we'll get the rights, so just keep working on that. Several years pass, he gets the rights. So he tells Neumeyer, okay, start like rewriting your script to mold it into a Starship Troopers film, which is why it's so similar and yet so different.
Very different. I don't know if you have an opportunity to read the book. I know my friend Brian Lucas has read the book. Actually regards the book. It's one of those things that you really enjoy the book, but you kind of enjoy the movie at the same time. And there's different connections. He didn't really emphasize what's about. Obviously, the book does follow a protagonist named Rico, getting recruited to fight in this alternate universe these bugs. All right, so there's Paul Verhoeven. This movie was released in 1997 and was immediately trashed by the critics as well as fans also who went to see this movie. It was in like worst movie of the year kind of categories.
Yeah.
And I think people didn't really shine on to the joke until generations after kind of hinted what was going on initially, that this is not supposed to be a cut and dry action movie, that you're supposed to kind of laugh at the whole steps. It's a parody, people.
Yeah, but the problem with it is that the book it's based on is so much kind of not a parody in a lot of ways. It's
Right.
more of a serious take, a little bit more right wing, a little bit kind of rah, have your guns, let's go for freedom,
Okay.
what it takes to be a citizen. There's a lot of elements to it
Right.
that are at play that are completely parodied in
You
the
can go back
film.
in the Wikipedia page of all the critical analysis on what people regard and why they trash it.
Yeah, I think that's part of the reason why the satire wasn't gotten, because people knew of the book well enough to know that like this isn't the book.
No, I did a review of a podcast before talking about this, and the line, "Come on, guys, you want to live forever," is a World War I line, and I don't remember who said it, a general, but it is a tagline from a real war, and I can't remember who actually said it.
You can bet he didn't live forever.
But it's Michael Ironside, of course, that's the man. Yeah, so it got panned on, and you have an ensemble cast here of pretty much people that were not really recognized at the time. Denise Richards, Captain Van Damme, Neil Patrick Harris is trying to we all know it was Doogie Howser at the time. We're like, Doogie Howser's in this movie? That's kind of what I remember.
Yeah,
That's the only
exactly.
thing I would regard this movie. But, of course, you have, when you're doing something like this, you need Michael Ironside in this and some other people as well.
Yeah, it was surprising. It's always surprising to me to see Clancy Brown because, of course, I grew up a SpongeBob kid, so like Mr. Krabs being in anything was my first love.
Yeah.
This is such a weird movie for me because I didn't get the satire when it came out either, but I was also 7. Like I just thought really cool big bug movie. This is awesome. And funny, the fact is like the one scene that seemed to get so much vitriol in American theaters was the co-ed shower scene early on in the film. And Verhoeven had always said like it's so weird that they can show like guts being ripped out, heads being chopped off, but if you put a man and a woman naked in a shower together, you just piss off every American somehow.
The bugs are chopping everybody off, but the co-ed football and the shower scene. Really, everyone sounds like, oh, that's disgusting.
Well, that happened to me because I was watching the movie and like the scene where the arachnid kills the cow early on in the film, I was like, awesome, great. The scene where there's the co-ed shower, I was like, I better take the videotape downstairs and watch it in the basement because I'm going to get in trouble.
Okay, so before we get into even more details, I just want to announce the wrong female character dies in this movie. We all should recognize that, right? The wrong female character.
I mean, Rico should have ended up with Jake Busey, but that's just me, I guess. Okay. I don't know.
Why I don't necessarily disagree with everybody that it's kind of hints on the fascism point, but Paul Verhoeven is doing a parody. It's kind of you recycling horses of a parody and upon a parody seems authentic. Mm-hmm. Where you're going to make fun of fascist propaganda films, which have wooden characters, really no personality villains, and overblown melodramatic and ultra-violent. Well, guess what? That's a Paul Verhoeven movie.
Yeah.
And it's kind of the hokiness adds to it that this is kind of, you're supposed to like go like this the entire time you're watching it.
Well, yeah, and he was, of course, heavily invested in this film. He was the only director that was ever, like, believed to be on the list.
Yeah.
And, of course, he was coming
I think he's the only one that probably get it.
Yeah, that's why they didn't want anybody else. They said no one else is really going to get what we're going for here. But he had 2 canceled projects, including a dream project, a pirate film that he'd been working on for years. Oh. And then, of course, the release of Showgirls, which tanked, and people say it's one of the worst movies ever made, coming out right before
now,
this.
Everybody
he
kind
made
of
it a hit.
That's another one everybody's kind of like take another view lens of it and stuff. Paul Verhoeven movies kind of do better when you distance the duration of time that's released, right?
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people got that. RoboCop's not a gung ho action movie. It's So right, if you are trying to make a parody of kind of fascist propaganda, you have to make it look like it. You have to almost be entwined to it. And I think people find it hit over the head when Neil Patrick Harris wears the uniform. You're like, okay, now I get what you're going for.
Yeah, he was known on set as Doogie Himmler, which I think is fascinating. And that's another element that Verhoeven injected in the film as well, is he purposely hired a lot of blonde, blue-eyed, German-looking people to be in the film because he wanted to emphasize how this group that even though they live in Buenos Aires have been invaded by like the Nazi-esque ideals of nationalism in some ways and fascism and kind of moving us towards that danger of, the bug guys may not be the direct villain of the film, you know?
Right. And like I said, you have villains who don't really have a personality, and that's perfect for bugs. They're a colonialism. There's almost like a social network of people. But also you have it developing the story of man against nature. Why are you fighting these? Well, you're colonizing the planets they're inhabiting. Mm-hmm. Of course they're going to fight back.
Yeah, and there's that element of they must be the bad guys because they did such and such things that we don't really understand them, and therefore, because we don't understand them, it makes them more deadly than if we actually were on terms with them.
One of the focal points that another analysis I would like to critique is, especially when you're doing these kind of making fun of propagandas, is Rico doesn't really change. None of the characters ever really change from the beginning, from point A to point B. They're pretty much, Rico is always the same as before he was in school, in the military, even at the end when he's leading the campaign. There isn't much of an evolution.
No, there's more of an extremism. There's a doubt, like the scene where he makes the mistake that leads to the death of one of his men. Right. By the way, fun fact, the woman that shot the guy in that scene, those two ended up getting married and having a baby. So, love happens during murder.
Starship Troopers, right.
But, that's the whole thing is like he gets the doubt, he turns back on himself, but really that just makes him stronger in his convictions as the film goes on.
Right, and like I said, there's no really evolutionary change to Rico, not to mention everybody else doesn't really have an evolutionary change. Patrick Harris' character is much the same other than his costume changes and where he gets overt his power. But also that happens to a lot of pulp movies too. Like Indiana Jones' character doesn't really change that much too, and he's punching Nazis. He doesn't really have an evolutionary change other than, oh, right, that's right, I love you, I forgot all about you.
The further you get from realism, the closer you can get to non-changing characters, because when you have something going to the nth degree, you don't really have to have a character change, because these are the elevated heroes, if you will. They're the people we look to.
So you have a lot of things regard to like a Paul Verhoeven film. Very campy, very hokey, exaggeration, a lot of emphasis of like action, right? Very militaristic. Almost like, what, didn't he do Total Recall too?
Yep.
Yeah, even have that kind of campaign of kind of old colonialism gone amok. All of a sudden, I go to Mars, but I got to follow these rules? Why can't I just go to trip to Mars? I'm on yeah. Go to Mars, right. So you have a lot of these traits that you always see in a Paul Verhoeven movie. Pretty much in this. I think this is probably, outside of RoboCop, this is one of his best.
Yeah, it's hard because every day of the week I could pick a different Verhoeven film to be my favorite, because like oftentimes I would say things like Basic Instinct, but then it would be like, gosh, I watched RoboCop last week and now it's my favorite again. And he's got that like wide berth of films that cover so many distinct subgenres that it's hard to get past just thinking one. I do know that I don't like Showgirls, though. That much I can attest to.
Right. Yeah, I think he missed the key. If you're playing it, if the movie is a piano piece, there's a lot of little plays, but there's wrong keys at certain points. Yeah. Where you get the ridiculousness, and it's the same script from the guy who did Basic Instinct. It should have worked. Yeah. But it didn't work.
Well, that's the weird thing with Verhoeven, too, is he's very much a director that I think we're getting less and less of in the studio system right now. And what I mean by that is because he is a director that seems to become more lavish and more respected when his films hit home video. Well, we don't have as many of those now, because films don't hit home video, they hit streaming, and then they get buried if they don't get watched. And so films don't get viewed or reassessed like this one would.
I play a part, right, he's very much a rental director than a theatrical director. But he also can hide in the trees of his emphasis of what he wanted to do. Hey, I want this shoot-'em-up pro-cop movie. Underneath, it's a very much not a cop movie.
When you could enjoy it on those levels. Like I said, I was a younger person when I saw the film, so I wasn't looking for satire in my Bug Hunt movie. No. But what I found was every time I watched it, I had a different view of the film. And that's why, even though I used to think it was just this kind of silly sci-fi picture, it's grown in my estimation. In fact, one of my friends from college, Joey Kramer, shout out to you, Joey, it's his favorite movie ever. Okay. He loves this movie, and he has said many times before, if he could make his own Starship Troopers, make a film that works on those levels across the spectrum, he would do it in a heartbeat.
All right, he's giving a shout out. He did his part. I'm doing my part.
Yeah, exactly. We're here stomping bugs.
So right, I think if I go back and do my list of best of 1997, it has to be in there. Now, it has to be in there. It's one of the best films of 1997. And it's funny that it's just got trashed. But because all the commercials showed it, was just like, you're doing a Star Wars movie bad. Like, why would I want to see that? And we just didn't understand the whole emphasis of what's happening and transpiring, right? You're making fun of Nazi fascist propaganda, as well as almost authentically looking like it.
Yeah, that's the sad thing about the film, is that it was almost destined to fail. And the sad thing is, because so many people, because Casper Van Dien and all these other people in the film, they all like had this love for Star Trek, or like the space operas of the time, and it's like they wanted to make their version of that, make a big film, but this film was never destined to be a Star Trek. Oh. So what do you get with that? You have to get a movie that kind of fumbles its way through. I think it got a C+ on Cinema Score. It just did not perform well at all.
No. Just, right. And I think one of the things that we emphasize what was wrong with it, that we like about it, it's just awkward.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think that's the case, too, where you have a lot of people will say, like, well, such and such adaptation isn't what the fans want. And I genuinely believe if this movie had been a more linear retelling of Starship Troopers, the book, I don't think it would have had this reappraisal years later. I think it would probably suffer the same fate, but without the reappraisal. This is a case where they're not giving the fans what they want. They're giving a film that they wanted to make, and I think it's all the better for it.
And definitely better than sequels. Okay, keep the conversation going. What do you think about my analysis of Starship Troopers? Do you agree with it? Should we do another Paul Verhoeven movie? Keep the conversation. Put a comment down below. Hit a like and subscribe.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you guys for joining us. Oh, side note, if you ever meet Jake Busey at a convention, talk with him, because he's an absolute delight. I talked with the guy for like 2 hours, partly about Starship Troopers, and he's wonderful. So check out Jake Busey in a lot of other films, including this one, and let us know your thoughts.
Did you mention his teeth?
No, of course not, because he's gorgeous. I want the buddy cop movie between him and his dad. Let us know your thoughts on the film down below, and do you think any of the Starship Troopers sequels are actually worth it?